girls with their nails done now.
The movie opens up in 1973 on Skull Island. We see Jack Chapman which is trying to catch signal with other soldiers which are trapped on Skull Island. Then he decides to rest and he sits on the tree which is grounded, but then this tree starts standing up and we get that it's not a tree, it's Spore Mantis. Jack Chapman takes his weapon and he starts shooting at Spore Mantis. Spore Mantis soon sees something else and it's going away. Jack Chapman first thought that it was scared of him, but then he looked at the forest and he saw a skull crawler which soon ate him. After that we see 48 years later. We see farm and we soon get to see house. We see field and we soon see Bill Chapman which is pretty old and he is riding horse. He is just having fun. Then he gets down from a horse and he is getting in the house and we see his shelves, we see his toy soldiers and animals and we get to see picture of Jack Chapman. Then Bill is sitting and he decides to watch TV. He turns on TV and television shows some gorillas at zoo. Then Bill remembers something and he is getting angry. He remember Kong, and that's when he hears some noise of jeeps from outside. He stands up and he is opening the door of his house, and we see 3 black jeeps which are parking in his garden and we see some men in black suits which are coming out from a car. Bill didn't seem excited because he already knew them, and he invited them inside. Then they sat around the table and they were discussing how they should have entered to the Skull Island, but then one of them says that Skull Island has a hollow earth under it and they could use it, but then another man said that there were some really scary monsters underground. And then Bill Chapman said with a bit smiley face, "We can make it as our advantage." After that we see Skull Island which is now in peace. We see Khan's axe which is dropped on the ground. We see wildlife which are living okay. Then we see giant buffaloes which are now around 95 feet, yeah. They have grown. Then we see Holy Tiger which is walking in the jungles and he is about to catch a deer when something steps near them and deer escapes. Then we see Kong which is coming. Tiger gets scared and he is running away. We see Kong which is pretty good now. And then we see Osprey which is flying above him. But Kong doesn't really care, as it seems ospreys are flying often on Skull Island and this already familiar to Kong. Then we that Kong is going to a lake and he drinks some water. After that we see Bill Chapman which is sitting in the helicopter. Bill was quite rich and him and this boys had a small organization which was called the Rollo. Then they get into Sector Underground base and we see his soldiers. Then they meet in the meeting center and they were telling Bill that when Kong dropped the helicopters, he killed their family members. As it seems almost all of them had a contact or touch with killed troops, but Bill already knew that. He was interested about the plan. Then one of the women said that Monarch was going to explore Hollow Earth where they were hearing crazy sounds from. But unfortunately they didn't have enough technology to search a signal. But if they'd follow Monarch they would find the place where signal was coming from and they would release skull crawlers and something even bigger that'd set island on fire. Then Bill laughed and he said, "Then let's begin." For that we see one of the outposts on Skull Island where the small Mechagodzilla was stolen from. We see detectives and police there. Then we Osprey landing there and we see Dr. Houston Brooks and new member of Monarch, Mr. George Potts. They get in the base where all searching stuff is going on. Then George said, "Already a few months passed and they still didn't finish this job?" Then Brooks told him, "Calm down. Those people who died there had families. And they really wouldn't like to hear that." Then George got quiet and then Brooks went inside base. Then George decided to follow him inside the base but he felt that something really heavy was coming from behind. He looked behind and we saw Kong which was staring at the base. George got excited. He immediately took his phone out and took picture of Kong. Then Kong started walking towards the base and he looked inside the opened hole on the top of small Mechagodzilla's base. But then he just walked next to it and he went to sleep on Skull Island. After that we see underground base of the Rollo which is preparing some underground and underwater tank. Then we see soldiers of the Rollo. They mostly looked like troops of Black Hand from Just Cause 4, and there were 8 troops and 9th was Bill himself which was following them. He got dressed in black soldier suits and he got inside the tank and they launched the tank on the ground. After riding for nearly 20 minutes, the tank swam into the ocean and it got submerged. Then we see George, which is walking on the outpost of Skull Island where 2D small mecha Godzilla was lost, but instead of another mech, there was some Hollow Earth vehicle which was called the Hev. Then George got closer to vehicle and he said, "Wow. That's nice." Monarch was sending 20 troops to the Hollow Earth to have found out where the signal was coming from. Then George looked at troops and they weren't wearing any big armor. Then George said, "Wait. They aren't gonna wear any armor?" Then Dr. Brooks asked him, "Why do they need it?" George said, "For Evregus." But then Brooks told him that nothing was going to happen to them. But then George said, "Okay, it's on you," with little angry face, and he went out from the outpost. Only about 10 seconds later Monarch started taking Hev in the air with Ospreys, where they attached the Hev and they pulled it in the air. They took it to the ocean and they soon dropped the Hev in the ocean. Then troops which were inside said, "Okay. Let's go." And they went into giant underwater tunnel. They swam and they soon found air pocket and they got into giant underground tunnel. Then they started getting out from the Hev and continued walking with feet. Then we see Monarch space where they are spectating troops on monitors. Then Brooks tells them with Makitaki, "Okay. Let's get deeper now." And they continue walking in the tunnel. After walking for 15 minutes, one of the soldiers said that he was bored, and he decided to have a little drink. Then everyone agreed with him and only Boss was standing. Then Boss told them, "Come on, you lazy dogs. We have a job here." Then one of the troops said that resting is always necessary. Then Boss was about to say something when something exploded behind him. We soon saw underground tank of the Rala which came up from the ground. And it started shooting mounted guns at soldiers. Then we see Monarch base where they see that soldiers are dying and everyone is so nervous. Then we see Bill Chapman's army which coming out from a tank. We soon get to see Bill with his uniform which is taking out his katana. Then we see Boss of Monarch which is standing up and he is pulling his hands up. Then Monarch Boss asks them, "Who are you? What do you want?" Then it was silence for 5 seconds and then Bill Chapman said, "Chaos." And he cut off Boss's throat with katana. Then other Monarch troops were about to take out their pistols when the Rala troops pulled them. Then Bill sees the giant rock putting the underground, but it more looks like a wall. Then they shoot this wall with tank and wall gets destroyed and we see giant underground village. Then we see so many skull crawlers, around 75, and we see some gate which is leading to dark place. But then we see giant snake which is coming out from there. She was called the Nazuki. Then tank shot at the upside a few times and whole ground from the upper island fell on Nazuki. Then they got into the tank and they left the place. Then we see skull crawlers which are climbing up and they get back to Skull Island. But they are still so small. They are almost like caddies for Kong. Then they get on the ground and they start attacking wildlife. We soon Monarch base which is also being attacked by skull crawlers. We see George and Dr. Brooks which are running towards helicopter. Then we see another fatman which is running towards the helicopter but he gets caught by tongue of skullcrawler and he gets eaten. Then we see another woman which is falling on the ground. Then she is about to stand up when she gets eaten by skullcrawler. Then George and Houston finally get in a helicopter and they are lifting off. Then we see skull crawlers which are running on Skull Island but then Kong steps on few of them and he is roaring. Then skull crawlers try to attack but they are too small. Then we see Nazuki which is rising from the hole. And Kong roars at her. We see helicopters of Monarch which are going to check what happened to dead troops and to arrest evil guys of the Rallo. But then the tank of the Rallo rises from the ground and it shoots helicopters and it soon drops all the helicopters on Skull Island. Then tank turns to the ocean and it disappears in the ocean. Then we see Nazuki which is roaring so loud like it's trying to wake something up. Kong gets angry and Nazuki starts going towards Kong. Kong tries to hit her but Nazuki soon got on the neck of Kong and it started choking. Kong tried to take her off but Nazuki was holding so strong. Then Kong started choking Nazuki with hands and Nazuki was holding less powerful. Then Kong took Nazuki out and he held her like a baseball bat. And he hit her on the rock and it hurt Nazuki so much. Then Kong threw Nazuki away. Nazuki was feeling so exhausted when Kong started going towards her. Nazuki soon realized everything and he got to right. Kong tried to hit her but Nazuki bit him in the neck and when Kong took her out he realized that Nazuki left some scars on him. Nazuki soon bite him in the hand and Kong got so angry, he caught Nazuki through Nazuki's mouth and he tried break her jaws. Nazuki bite him in the fingers and it was too painful for Kong. Then Nazuki tried to go away but Kong caught her through her tail and he dropped it on the ground and Nazuki got so exhausted then Kong took her again and he threw it at one of the mountains and Nazuki got so damaged. But Nazuki found another hole to the hollow earth and she started climbing inside. Only her tail was left when Kong caught her through her tail and he pulled Nazuki from the ground. Then Nazuki flipped herself and she bite Kong in a face. Kong got so damaged on the face, and he roared so loud. Then Nazuki got on Kong's neck again and she started choking him. Then we see Monarch soldiers which are discussing to launch small Mechagodzilla, but then they said that they would just waste them. And they should just let them fight. Then we see Kong which is trying to take Nazuki. But Nazuki bites him in the neck and Kong seems less powerful. Nazuki keeps being on Kong's neck. Kong started losing his mind and he fell on the ground. Then Nazuki got off Kong and she started roaring when Kong caught her through her mouth and he dropped her on the ground so painfully. Then Nazuki was feeling so exhausted when Kong took her through her tail and he threw her away. Nazuki fell on ground but after 5 seconds she started moving. But then Kong jumped on him and he crushed his center stomach. It made Nazuki cut in half, and Nazuki started bleeding. Then Kong looked at half Nazuki which was trying to escape. Kong laughed a bit and he crushed the head of Nazuki with his feet. Then Kong felt tired and decided to have little nap, and he fell in the lake. He didn't verb in water cause he was so big. Then we see Monarch outposts on Skull Island where they are discussing about Nazuki. Then we see helicopter goes into hole which let Nazuki rise on Skull Island and the helicopter lands there. Skullcrawlers disappeared for some reason so Monarch started exploring underground village. Then one of the explorers decided to walk it left. And he stepped on skull of something. Then he started digging round and he found skull of Tyrannosaurus Rex. Then they called another helicopter and they took the skull in laboratory. Then they started going deeper and they discovered more paintings of Kongs fighting skullcrawlers. As it seems there were around 8 Kongs on the island before. Then everyone got excited and they started taking pictures. Then we see Osprey which is landing on Skull Island. Then we see George and Brooks which are coming down from Osprey and they met other members in a meeting center. Then we see monitors from which they are spectating Explorer. Then George said that it was cool that they found new location. But then Brooks answered, yeah. At cost of 20 lives. After that we see the Rallos base where they are so angry that there was nothing useful in their behavior and in the hollow earth. Then Bill came in and he said, don't worry. We will figure something out to kill this giant ape. Then one of the men said that this giant ape killed Giant Snake and over 60 skullcrawlers. Then we see George which is arriving on Skull Island with Osprey helicopter. We soon get to see Dr. Brooks arriving with him. Then they get into outpost of Skull Island and we see Monarch team which are spectating Monarch explorers which are flying into giant underground village which has just been discovered. They weren't afraid because all the skullcrawlers were run away or disappeared. Then we see one of the explorers which is walking there and he sees some writings on the walls, but the dust doesn't let him see it completely, so he erases some dust with his hand, and he saw something fantastic. He saw around 8 Kong species fighting skullcrawlers and giant Tyrannosaurus-like dinosaurs is preparing to fight them all, and this was painted on a wall. Explorer called the helicopter and they took this part of wall to the base. Then we see George which is walking to the base where they called him from, and he gets into room where giant piece of wall is placed and scientists are exploring it. Then Brooks came with him and he told him, we just found out that there had been giant Tyrannosaurus on this island in past. Then George answered, but now he is dead. Then Brooks asked him, how can you be sure? And Brooks continued talking. He had been scariest thing on island. It was even forbidden for people to write about him. But then one of the ancient people decided to write it anyway. And the piece which we found was in some kind of a secret basement. Then George said calmly, we have no proof that this thing has ever existed or if it's alive. So just move on, old man. Then Brooks told him that Monarch had noticed another activites in underground just 10 minutes. Then George told him, is it another skullcrawler? Brooks told him, no. It's caused by something really large. Then alarms turn on and the military helicopters go towards the beach. Then Brooks asked, what's happening? Then one of the scientists told him that they noticed huge seismic activities coming from the beach. And it might be something really huge. Then Brooks told George to have left the island. But George answered that he wasn't going to miss this. Then we see 4 military helicopters which are flying to the beach, and we see something rising, giant Tyrannosaurus-like dinosaur which was around 85 meters, and he was green. He was called Gorosaurus. He rose and he started walking on Skull Island, and then he roared and soon Kong roared back. Then Gorosaurus looked at Kong which was staring at him with so angry face. Gorosaurus went towards him. Kong also started going towards him. Helicopters got away to not get smashed by monsters. Gorosaurus was walking towards Kong when Kong jumped up and hit him in the face. Gorosaurus felt exhausted and he fell on the ground. Kong took him through his tail and he threw Gorosaurus away, and Gorosaurus crashed to mountain and he fell really painfully. Then Kong started going towards him. Gorosaurus stood up and he bit him in the neck. Kong roared so angrily and he started hitting him, but this didn't have much effect on Gorosaurus. Then Kong hit Gorosaurus in the neck really hard that it made him to get off Kong, but Gorosaurus soon turned around and he hit his tail to feet and he knocked Kong on the ground. Then he stood on Kong's chest. But then Kong woke up and he dropped Gorosaurus on the ground. Gorosaurus was trying to get up but Kong caught his head and he hit him in the head, and Gorosaurus got knocked out. Kong decided to walk away but Gorosaurus bit him in the leg and it hurt Kong so much. Then Kong tried to hit him another leg but Gorosaurus stood up and he bit him in the neck. Kong was trying to take him out but Gorosaurus held so strong. Then Kong tried to hit him in the neck, but Gorosaurus dodged and he jumped on Kong. Kong tried to hit him again but Gorosaurus jumped behind and he attacked Kong in the hand. Then Kong got angry and he pulled Gorosaurus in the air and he dropped him on the ground. Then Kong hit Gorosaurus in the face and he took him through his tail, and he threw him away. Gorosaurus flew away and he fell on the ground really hard. But he stood up and roared so angrily at Kong. Kong roared back and Kong went towards him. Gorosaurus dodged and Kong crashed to mountain. After 2 seconds Gorosaurus attacked him in the leg and he dropped Kong on the ground. Then Gorosaurus stood on him and started plugging the sharp toes into Kong's chest. Kong was in so big pain but he couldn't stand up. Then Gorosaurus at the sky and he roared like he was the king of Skull Island. When he saw some lighting on Kong's hand, some part of the power of King Ghidorah was still left in Kong, and he caught Gorosaurus' feet and he took him out. Gorosaurus stood up and he looked excited. Kong wasn't lighting much, he only had little power left. He went towards Gorosaurus and he hit him so strong that Gorosaurus got knocked out. Then Kong took him through his tail and he threw him at the beach. Gorosaurus was slowly standing up when Kong was going towards him. Then Kong was about to hit him again when he heard something from behind. He looked behind and he saw a second Gorosaurus which climbed up from the underground. Kong got so angry, he roared at him. Gorosaurus roared back. Then Kong got bitten by first Gorosaurus in the leg. Then 2 Gorosaurus attacked Kong and Kong had to fight 1 versus 2, but he wasn't giving up. He threw one away and he attacked 2 and he started hitting him in the face. Then he caught Gorosaurus through his mouth and he tried to break his jaw. Gorosaurus took him out and he threw Kong away. Kong fell on ground but he soon stood up. But second Gorosaurus attacked him from behind and 1 Gorosaurus attacked him too. And they were both biting in hands. Kong got angry and he first took out 1 Gorosaurus. Then he jumped on second one's back and he started punching him. Gorosaurus soon fell on the ground cause of Kong's mass, but second Gorosaurus bit him in the neck and he dropped Kong on the ground and he roared at Kong. Kong stood up and he roared so loudly. Then we see George and Brooks which are sitting in a helicopter which is recording the battle and they are watching the battle from far away. Then George took out his phone and he started recording the battle too. Then Brooks told him that they already were recording the battle, but then George answered that he post this on his Instagram story. Then we get back to 2 Gorosaurus and Kong fighting. Kong hits Gorosaurus in the face but second one bites him in the neck and soon first one bites him in the neck. Kong takes out first one and he attacks another one. Gorosaurus are tired but they continue to fight. Kong runs forward and he catches one of them through tail and he is thrown it to second one. 2 Gorosaurus soon stands up and he is roaring at Kong. Kong roars back and he runs towards him. Gorosaurus hits his tail to Kong but this doesn't have much effect on Kong. He just shaked a bit and then he hit Gorosaurus in the face. Gorosaurus was about to fall on ground when Kong caught his face and he kept hitting him. Gorosaurus was losing his power when Kong dropped him on the ground and he started breaking his jaw. Gorosaurus was trying to resist Kong but he was so weak. And Kong finally broke his jaw. And he roared. Then we see only Gorosaurus which standing up. He looks at his dead brother and he gets very angry. He roars at Kong and Kong looks at him with badass face. Gorosaurus gets little scared but angriness soon takes over fear and Gorosaurus started running towards Kong. Kong also started running towards him and they clashed really hard. Gorosaurus was biting Kong. Kong was hitting him and Gorosaurus starched his chest. The battle was going super crazy. Gorosaurus wasn't giving up and neither was Kong. They were fighting really hard but then Kong felt that he was getting bit tired. But Gorosaurus kept fighting like beast. Kong took him out and he hit him in the face. Gorosaurus felt little exhausted but then he realized everything and he bit Kong in the neck. Kong took him out but Gorosaurus hit his tail to Kong in the face and Kong fell on the ground. Gorosaurus was roaring at him like he was challenging him. Kong was so tired and damaged that he couldn't get up. Gorosaurus stood on him and he started roaring so loud that Kong was knocked out on the ground and he got some memories. He remembered his natives and parents. He remembered the day and the pain which he experienced when he lost his parents. He woke up and Gorosaurus was still standing on him. He started standing up with so angry face and he threw Gorosaurus away. Gorosaurus fell on the ground with so excited face. Kong stood up with so angry and he pushed Gorosaurus in the face. Gorosaurus got knocked out and Kong took him through his tail and he threw him away. Gorosaurus fell on the beach and he was so damaged. Kong was so angry at him and he went towards. Gorosaurus hasn't also forgotten his dead brother and he stood up shakily. Kong was running towards and soon Gorosaurus also started going towards him. Kong jumped up to hit Gorosaurus when Gorosaurus dodged and Kong jumped on the ground. Then Gorosaurus got onto Kong's neck and he started biting him. Kong soon took him out and he dropped him on the ground. Gorosaurus stood up and he struck Kong in the leg. Kong tried to take him out but Gorosaurus held on his leg so strong. Then Kong started punching him in the face and Gorosaurus got off him. Then Kong took Gorosaurus through his tail and he threw him to the beach. Then he went towards him. Then he got there and Gorosaurus wasn't there. Kong got little scared and he got attacked from behind. Gorosaurus bit him right in the face and he got to Kong's neck. Kong was trying to take him out but Gorosaurus was so angry and strong. But Kong somehow took him out and he dropped him on the ground. Gorosaurus went towards him like he was attacking him but then he just jumped over Kong and he swam in the ocean, and he disappeared in the ocean. Kong tried to chase him but he was so weak and he also felt tired. Then he started losing his mind. And he fell on the ground. Then we see helicopter which is flying to Skull Island. Then we see few Monarch troops and George which are already on Skull Island. George asked one of the troops where Gorosaurus was gone. But Troop answered he didn't know, but then they got called by Monarch and they said that Gorosaurus was headed to north and west, towards Shanghai. George got worried and then he said he shouldn't reach the city. Then we see Kong which is waking up and George is standing so close to him. Kong knows where Gorosaurus went and he is very angry. He stands up shakily and he starts going towards the beach to chase to Gorosaurus. But then he stops and he looks at something. He looks at his axe which is put on the mountain, and he laughs. Then we see 12 military helicopters which are flying above the sea and we soon get to see Gorosaurus which is swimming in the sea and he is approaching Shanghai. Then we get back to Kong on Skull Island which is taking his axe. And he starts swimming in the ocean.
After that we see Shanghai which is being evacuated by Monarch and police department. They are using buses, helicopters and even usual cars which are leaving city. Then we see beach where the helicopters are picking people to take them to the safe places. Then we see aircraft carrier about 2 kilometers away from the beach. We see soldiers running on aircraft carrier and just minding their jobs. But then one of the soldiers sees something in the sea. He stands at the border of the aircraft carrier to have a better look. And he sees back of Gorosaurus which is swimming towards aircraft carrier. Soldiers get scared and he calls another soldiers to look at Gorosaurus. Then soldiers get scared and they call with their walkie-talkies and they say that situation has got much worse and they should hurry up. After that we see Gorosaurus which is about to crash aircraft carrier, but then he just drowns himself and he swims under the aircraft carrier and he heads toward Shanghai which still hasn't finished evacuation. Then soldiers on aircraft carrier call the attack helicopters and they say that target is going to be in Shanghai in less than minute. Then we see military helicopters which are flying up from the aircraft. After that we see beautiful shot of top view of helicopter which is flying above the sea and we see another 31 helicopters with it and they are chasing Gorosaurus. Then helicopters started dropping rockets at Gorosaurus which was halfway in the sea. Gorosaurus drawn a little bit and bombs exploded on the sea and it didn't have any serious effect on Gorosaurus. Then helicopters started speeding up, and they started shooting mounted guns at Gyrosaurus. They knew that it did not have any effect, but they had to do something. Then we see that Gyrosaurus is causing a little flooding, tsunami, in city around 15 feet high, and the water gets into the city, and the flooding took the two buses which were trying to leave the city. Then we see Gyrosaurus rising from the water and he is roaring. Then we see soldiers which are shooting RPGs from the roof, but Gyrosaurus doesn't really care. He takes a look of the city which is pretty big, and he starts running towards another end of Shanghai. We see fighter jet which joins the fight, and it starts shooting at Gyrosaurus. Gyrosaurus tries to catch it with mouth but Jet escapes, then Jet starts flying towards him again. Gyrosaurus swings his tail and he hits Jet. Jet crashes to building and it gets destroyed. Gyrosaurus feels satisfied and he continues running. Then Gyrosaurus sees airport and he runs towards it. Then we see George which is sitting in helicopter which is flying towards Shanghai. He seems little worried but then he comes on mood and he looks from the window of helicopter and he sees Shanghai which is on fire and he gets more scared. Then we see 9 helicopters which are chasing Gyrosaurus in the city and they are shooting at him. Gyrosaurus jumps over a building and 2 helicopters crash to it. Now there are 7 left. They chase Gyrosaurus in the streets and it's hard for them. Then Gyrosaurus swings his tail and he drops another helicopter. Now 6 left. Gyrosaurus finally makes it to the airport and we see him jumping on the open field of planes and he is roaring on the background of the destroyed city. Then we see people at airport which still couldn't get in the helicopters and buses and they are watching Gyrosaurus with scared faces. Gyrosaurus notices them and he starts going towards them but then Kong jumped out from city and he pushed Gyrosaurus in the face. Gyrosaurus got exhausted and he fell on the ground. Then we started standing up and he saw Kong which was standing in front of him and he was holding axe. Gyrosaurus got scared but he had to fight. He stood up and he roared at Kong with so angry face. Kong roared back and he started going towards Gyrosaurus. Gyrosaurus jumped up and he did kangaroo kick to Kong. Kong soon recovered and he hit his axe to Gyrosaurus in the leg. Gyrosaurus got angry and he bit him in the neck and he started dragging him to the city. Kong tried to resist but Gyrosaurus dropped him on one of the buildings and whole building fell on Kong. It made Kong really weaker but he tried to stand up anyway. But Gyrosaurus steps on him and he doesn't let him stand up. Kong tries more and Gyrosaurus plugs his sharp toes in his chest. It's so painful for Kong. Then Kong takes his axe and he hits Gyrosaurus in the leg. Gyrosaurus gets so damaged and he falls on the ground. Kong stands up and he tries to hit his axe to Gyrosaurus. But Gyrosaurus jumps away and Kong misses. After 3 seconds Gyrosaurus does his kangaroo kick again and Kong falls on the ground. But he stands up soon and he gets hit by the tail of Gyrosaurus. But then Kong caught his tail and he threw him at one of the buildings. Gyrosaurus stood up and he looked at Kong with so angry face. Kong also looked at him and he threw his axe at Gyrosaurus. Gyrosaurus dodged and he didn't get hit. Then he went towards Kong. Kong also went towards him and they clashed. Kong was punching him and Gyrosaurus was biting him as usual. Then we see Monarch helicopters which are shooting Gyrosaurus. Gyrosaurus hits tail to one of the helicopters and helicopter falls on Kong's face. Kong got angry and he started punching Gyrosaurus harder. Then he finally got out from his jaws and he hit him in the neck. Gyrosaurus felt a bit exhausted and then Kong threw him away. Gyrosaurus fell really painfully. Then he stood up and Kong started roaring so loudly at him he roared back. After that we see the base of the Rollo where they are meeting in church-like center and Bill Chapman is telling the people that Kong won't win against Gyrosaurus. But everyone is still angry and they are asking how one Gyrosaurus stands a chance. Then Bill told them there is something you don't know. Then everyone got quiet and they asked what is it? And Bill said something that will increase the chances of Gyrosaurus winning. We have secret drugs and elixirs that we will drop on Gyrosaurus using cargo airplane. And when Gyrosaurus smell them and most likely swallows them they will make his blood cells 2 times stronger. And this is the key ingredient to winning. Then one of the men in meeting center said prepare the cargo plane. After that we see Kong and Gyrosaurus which are still fighting each other ruthlessly. Kong punches him in the face but Gyrosaurus hits him with his tail. Kong then takes his axe and he hits him in the neck and it knocks Gyrosaurus on the ground. Then Kong was about to hit him again. When Gyrosaurus jumped away Kong threw his axe at him and he hit Gyrosaurus in the leg which of course was so painful for Gyrosaurus. Gyrosaurus took the axe out of his leg with his mouth and he started running towards the sea. Kong caught him through his tail and he threw him back to the city. Gyrosaurus stood up and he roared at Kong again but he seemed to be going out of power and Kong pushes him in the face. After that we see few trucks of the Rollo which are entering one of the airports. We see some dead bodies of cops. Then we see Bill Chapman coming down from the truck and few other troops with him. Then we see that troops are taking out some large boxes around 12 feet and they're taking them to the bay of cargo plane. Then we see them attaching the boxes inside the bay and we see Bill and other troops which are getting on the plane. Then the shut doors and they sit on the chairs and they are lifting off and we see beautiful shots of cargo plane flying up. Then we see Bill inside which is smiling and he says, "Today I will avenge my father. Today we will revenge our family members." And the cargo plane flies in the clouds. Then we get back to Kong and Gyrosaurus which are still fighting each other, but Gyrosaurus is trying to escape from Kong. But Kong decided that he will kill Gyrosaurus no matter what and he would finish this nightmare once and for all. Then Gyrosaurus hit his tail to Kong and soon he made his kangaroo kick. Kong got knocked out on the ground and Gyrosaurus started digging the ground. Kong woke up and Gyrosaurus had already climbed underground. Then Kong tried to dig the ground too, but he felt so tired and he sat on the ground. He wanted to have a little nap, but then he saw Gyrosaurus pulling his head from the ground and he is roaring. Then Kong gets angry and he punches his chest. Then we see the cargo plane of the Rollo which is appearing from the sky and it's launching the boxes of elixirs and they all drop into the mouth of Gyrosaurus. Gyrosaurus feels strange and he jumps up from the ground. He feels more free and stronger now. He feels like he is born to kill Kong and he goes towards Kong. Kong tries to hit him but Gyrosaurus quickly dodges and he hits his tail to Kong and he drops Kong on the ground. Kong tries to stand up but Gyrosaurus jumps on him and he stands on him. Then he looks at Kong which is trying to stand up with evil face as hell. Then he roars as the sign of victory. Then he feels some pain in his stomach. He looks down and he sees that Kong plugged his axe in his stomach. Gyrosaurus felt so big pain and Kong stood up. He took him through his tail and he threw Gyrosaurus away. When Gyrosaurus fell, axe got even more plugged and it increased the pain. Then he tries to swim in the ocean but Kong takes him through his tail and he throws him back to the city. Gyrosaurus falls on the ground with so miserable face. Then Kong goes towards him but then we see cargo plane which is shooting at Kong. Kong jumps up and he damages the wing of cargo plane and cargo plane with Bill Chapman and others inside crashes. Then Kong looks back at Gyrosaurus which is trying to stand up. Then Kong takes out his axe from the stomach of Gyrosaurus and he hits him in a neck so strong and Kong cuts off the head of Gyrosaurus. Then he throws his axe away and he roars. Then he feels tired and he gets passed out on the ground. Then we see Monarch members and military which are searching for survivors. Cause City wasn't completely evacuated during the battle. Then we see George and Brooks which are arriving at Shanghai. Then George says, "Oh my God." Then Brooks came with him and he told him, "George, you were always right, but about this Gyrosaurus I was right." Then George laughed and he looked back at Kong. We see that Kong is waking up. George gets scared and he tells Brooks to not move but Brooks laughs and he says that he is no threat to them. Then Kong stands up shakily. He looks at innocent people. Then he turns back and he starts going towards the beach. Brooks laughs and George gets a bit confused. Then Kong stops at the beach and he roars as the sign of victory. Then he starts swimming into the ocean and he disappears soon.
When you break it up, you'll see who had it all. You had it all. You said you wanted to fall into oblivion. Forget about the world we're living in. Fall into oblivion, 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 oblivion. Oh, go in. Fall into oblivion.
In post-credit scene we see space and we get to see Jupiter. Then we hear some monster sounds at the sky. in end credit scenes we see some underwater caves and we soon get to see Air Pocket in there. Then we see Godzilla which is sleeping there, but after 10 seconds he opens his eyes.